You're watching the Battered Fans Network.
Welcome everybody to episode number 10 of the Battered MLS Fans Podcast. I am your host, Mr. Daniel Granada, and alongside me, as always, I have a panel of MLS podcasters and content creators. So let me go ahead and start bringing them on so they can introduce themselves. Let's start from my top left, Mr. Eric, voice of the Black and Gold. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing great, man. We've had a fantastic week, including an Open Cup victory. So, yeah, I think things are great. Sometimes you get good, sometimes you get bad. It's been real nice in LA lately.
I mean, well, I'm going to get into that because I feel like it hasn't been nice, but I feel like the Open Cup's going to cover all that up. But we're going to get into that. All right, Danny Brams, I feel like I just spoke to you recently. What's going on, man?
Not a lot of Danny. Good to see you. Good to see everyone here on the panel. Thanks for the invite, as always. I had a lot of fun previewing the Charlotte-Miami match with you guys last week. I called a draw, and we got the draw, so I'm feeling a little bit like Nostradamus over here, and things are good. And, Eric, isn't it always good in L.A.? I mean, come on. Even when it's bad, it's good there, right?
Man, it's relative. It gets like 55 degrees here. Everybody's got parkas. It hits 90 degrees, and everybody's dying in their AC. So,
in Miami, if it hits 69, you got the UGG boots out. So I feel you.
Yep.
All right, Greg, first time. Greg, what's going on? New England Revolution recap.
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here. You know, they say you're just as good. You're as good as your last game, and the Revs won last week. So, you know, we're flying high. It's about the biggest high point of our season. And Caleb Porter says that he thinks that the Revs could win every game through the remainder of the season and make the playoffs. So I'm really excited to talk to you guys about the Revolution, who apparently think they're going to make the playoffs.
They still have a chance, though.
They technically have a chance. Mathematically, there is a chance the Revs make the playoffs. Yes, and Caleb Porter likes those odds.
Yes, I know. Hey, you got to fight for something. Danny Brams, Tommy's in the asking, do you have a bottle of wine?
I feel like that's like my signature thing now. I might have to go get one. I was going to come as sober Brams tonight, but if they want drunky Brams, I do have a bottle just outside the door. I don't know.
I didn't know drunky
guys. And
Drunky Brams is apparently
if my screen goes blank, that's me going to get the bottle of wine. I am a man of the people.
All right. And then also for the first time joining us in the MLS show, Joe. What's going on, Joe? Representing Houston.
Not much going on. I think last time I was with you was when we beat y'all in the final last year. So,
yes.
Always great to chat again.
So it's been a while because that was an Open Cup final exactly a year ago.
Exactly a year ago, yeah.
So we'll definitely get into that. But before we get into that, last year's Open Cup, let's talk about this year's Open Cup. I'll start with LAFC. Actually, I'm sorry. I know you want to talk about that, Eric, but I see a lot of people in the chat, and I'm getting a lot of crap. Real quick, just for those of you that are unaware, Daniel Granada, Battered Herons, we do an Inter Miami show. At 9 o'clock, we just had a show, and I wasn't on today's show, but there was a debate between whether Luis Suarez or Cucho Hernandez should be the MVP. I am a Cucho Hernandez stan, okay? So I jumped on the show for a couple minutes wearing a Cucho shirt. Now everybody's looking at me like Benedict Arnold because we play against Columbus, obviously, tomorrow. My question to you guys, first question, MVP, who should it be? I'll start with Eric. Eric, who should be the MVP?
Well, I mean, I initially would want to pick Carlos Vela to be the MVP, but since that's really unrealistic, to me, I'm going Evander because Evander, like what he's done on a really bad team, like he's carrying that team right now. And I think if you look at,
but it's wild because they have 3 players that have like 15 or more goals, no?
Yeah, they have some other guys, but like I can hardly even tell you who they are, and I'm in the West. Like it's all Evander. Like the goals he makes are ridiculous. I have a bit of a bias. I love Brazilians, so it's all those things, but some of his goals have just been insane this year, and I love the way he's playing, and so it's Evander for me, man. I'm not picking Cucho. I'm not picking Suarez. No, not too much disrespect to those guys, just a little, but I'm going to go with Evander.
Joe, you're out on the West Coast. You also going Evander?
I actually am also going Evander. I agree with that take. I think he is the amount of goals he scored as well. Like it was like 15 goals and almost 20 assists.
I can actually put it up. I actually have it somewhere here. Oh no, I don't, because he's not on the top. He's not on the top 6. But I believe he is. Believe he has 16. 15
Yeah,
or 16.
15 goals, 18 assists. That's what he's got.
18 assists?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't realize he had that many assists.
How many of those are real assists, though, and not like secondary, like BS hockey assists?
Like hockey assists?
That's a good question.
They don't count hockey assists.
They do.
MLS does.
MLS
does, yeah.
That's why he has 18.
Well, there's two. Wait. Because the hockey assist is the assist to the assist.
Right.
Okay.
MLS is like the only league in the world that counts them.
Yeah, it's really silly.
How am I just learning this now? Like, I thought I'd freaking have a
actual assists, he has 14.
Yeah, all right.
15 goals, 14 assists. That's pretty damn good. In Portland, Portland are a team that needs to score a lot of goals. He scored the fashion he's scoring the goals. Like, he's scoring just bangers to win games right at the end. He's getting Rodriguez and Mora really involved. If I had to give it to anyone else, I would. This is you guys are gonna hate me for this, but I mean, could you really argue with the numbers that Messi's putting up? I mean,
but if it's not crucial, I think it should be Messi.
Could you argue with that? I mean, what does he have? He has 15 goals, 15 assists. So he has the same stat line that Evander has in 800 less minutes.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. So I am all for if we're going straight statistically, I think it should be Messi.
Yeah, but I would give it to Orlando though because he's played the whole season.
Well, I would give it to Cucho.
All right, you guys are nuts. I'm sorry. I got to jump in here because, like, I don't know. I expect the LA guy to be a hipster. I don't know. Hipsterism is not something that's like something I associate with Houston. So I don't know where you're coming from, Joe, but there's no fucking way that Evander is the MVP in a world where Cucho Hernandez is doing like what he's doing. Absolutely insane. Just so everyone knows, I am a man of the people, and I'm very susceptible to peer pressure. So I did go get the bottle of wine, drinking the Malbec tonight.
This sounds like some East Coast bias to me.
I'm not drunk enough yet to try to take away the MVP from Cucho, who rightly deserves it, who's delivered it the whole season, who has Columbus right up near the top of the standings, despite Miami's juggernaut status. And Portland is barely even in the playoffs if they even hold on. So what does it matter, all those numbers for Evander? And then people will say, oh, well, where would they be without Evander? Well, who cares? They're not going to be a factor in the title race.
I disagree with that. I think they could contend. I think they're that good.
Well, Portland right now, if they win their last 3 games, and obviously you have a lot of things that need to go right, they could possibly end up in the top 4 seed. I think it's wild. The Western Conference is crazy. And Francisco, I see you're asking, is the MVP for just regular season or the whole year? It's just the regular season. It's regular season MVP.
And what other team in MLS could score at that quick of a rate that Portland does, other than Miami with Messi? No one.
Well,
you could always win games that way.
I think too. It's like there's such a strong cast in Miami and such a strong cast in Columbus. Like, you know, again, I think Evander is just so outclassing the rest of the guys. I mean, almost like Lucho Acosta did last season at Cincinnati. It's like there's just clearly a guy that everything's going through, you know, whereas, you know, Miami, it's a bit of a committee. Like it could be Suarez, it could be Messi, you know, but it's just it's a machine versus like one person pulling it together.
Okay, so let me throw another name at you before. And by the way, I think, look, me and Danny went Cucho. The West Coast, Joe and Eric went Evander. And now, Greg, you're the only non-playoff team here, so maybe you're the unbiased tiebreaker with the New England Revolution. So what do you think? Who should be the MVP?
Yeah, I would give it to Cucho. I think Columbus is a very, very strong team. And I think with Miami, Messi and Suarez, I think they both had phenomenal seasons. And I think it's kind of adds to the debate of, you know, they're a really loaded team. They kind of need each other. Whereas I think Cucho Hernandez is a little bit more important to Columbus. But just to kind of get back to the point that Eric just made a second ago about, you know, if you're on a loaded team versus, you know, single-handedly carrying your team up, I mean, hypothetically, let's say DC United sneaks into the playoffs. Do we give Christian Benteke some MVP consideration as well? He's got basically half of their goals. I mean, that team would definitely not be in the playoff picture at all if it wasn't for Christian Benteke. Obviously, I don't think he's going to win. I'm not endorsing him, but I'm just saying, like, is that a name we should be throwing out as well?
Yes.
Well, I was going to throw out another name also. For people, I don't know, and I literally haven't heard many people talking about it at all. Alonso Martinez from NYCFC, like he's scoring, no, not MVP, but he's scoring at the same clip as Messi almost. Like I don't know how many games he's played, but he's almost scoring a goal a game. Like nobody's talking about him, but he is playing ridiculous for NYCFC, and it's kind of flown under the radar. So MVP, no, but statistically, he's having a really good season, and nobody's talking about it. So I think that's a name that people need to not MVP, but some people might need to get familiar with because he's having a good year so far.
I thought Evander was a hipster pick. Jesus Christ, Alonso Martinez. What are we talking about here?
I'm telling you, hey, you get. Hopefully, we don't get familiar with him in the playoffs, because if we do, that means NYCFC is doing better than I was hoping they would.
I think the reality of this award, though, is I don't know the exact stat, but it almost always goes to a top 2 team. So I think that's what's going against Evander, that it's going to go to the best player of a top, a 1 seed or a 2 seed. And I think that's what's going to tip it in Cucho's direction.
Mm-hmm. And Chris is saying Corona over any other beer. I see, Eric, you got a Modelo there. Modelo.
Yes, sir. I do.
So what are you going, Corona or Modelo?
Oh, no, Modelo always. And I like to make micheladas, and Modelo is the best for micheladas.
If I had a michelada, it's disgusting. It's like tomato juice.
Oh, it's awesome, dude. Like, I don't know. It's way more than that. It's tomato juice. It's clam juice. It's salt, pepper, hot sauce. And then whatever else you want to throw in there, man. No, it's basically a Bloody Mary with beer in it that you can drink on a hot day without getting wasted because it's vodka.
It sounds horrible.
Eric, you can't hate on a michelada, but let me just say this real quick about Messi. The reason Messi shouldn't win it is because of he's missed half the season, and Miami has kept their form. Like, numbers are really nothing to Messi. Like, we know his talent, but how can he be considered the most valuable player when they've been just fine without him as well?
And that's the last thing I'm going to bring up about Luis Suarez, is that a lot of people are like, oh, but Luis Suarez helped them win when Messi was out. Luis Suarez was out for over a month also. They were winning without both of them, right? So, and I don't want to take away anything from Messi or Suarez, but when you take that into consideration, people say that for Messi, but they don't say it for Suarez. Suarez also missed a bunch of games while he was out in Copa America. But like I said, I think it's Cucho. But anyway, getting back to the regular show sheet and 10 topics. Open Cup champions, LAFC. Now, congratulations. Since we last spoke, I thought you guys might win the Supporter Shield. All of a sudden, you guys just pooped the bed, just started losing games right and left. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, you win the Open Cup, and it feels like the season is saved because at least you got a title. What's going on in LA? Why are you playing so poorly? And does the fact that you won the Open Cup all of a sudden make up for everything?
I think I wouldn't say it makes up for everything, but losing the Open Cup against Sporting KC at home would have been a complete disaster. And I think the fans would have been screaming for blood, and rightfully so. I would have been screaming for blood at that point. Like, look at example, and this is the difference between MLS and Flamengo without getting too far off topic. But Flamengo in Brazil, they're about to fire their 3rd coach in 2 years and go to their 4th coach in 2 years. When have you ever heard of an MLS team even getting like 3 coaches within a 2-year span? It doesn't happen. So
maybe Atlanta United,
Chicago, maybe.
Sorry. Didn't mean to interrupt. I just have to take shots at Atlanta.
Yeah, I'm getting my fault. Yeah. Here on this shit. Anyways, so basically, I think part of the slump, and not blaming Houston, who handed 2 of those losses to us in there. But I think what happened to us is the summer transfer window hit us. We got an Olivier Giroud. We've been trying to get a target 9 going. If you get a guy like Giroud, you have to play him. And Cherundolo has always played with a false 9. Before it was Carlos Vela. When he retired, Mateus Bogusz stepped up into that role and is doing phenomenal at it. Kiki Oliveira, another breakout player in the right wing. So playing, and we're known for being a transition counter-attacking team. Olivier Giroud is a guy that lives off of service, lives off of good passing, and he's not a presser. So throwing this guy into a formula like that was just about, it was like oil and water, basically. It's like the two just didn't mix. And I think it's taken a while for the team to really catch up to where Giroud's positive attributes are. One that I noticed very quickly is his passing is on this whole other level. And I almost feel like he needs to dumb down his passing. A couple through balls he played to Bouanga were so slick that Bouanga like didn't even bothered making the run that would have gave him basically a straight shot at the net. And it's just they were just these really, really clever little balls. And I think your top flight European players are ready for players to make these extremely difficult passes like it's nothing. And in MLS, guys they're not used to seeing these kind of passes, so they don't expect it when it happens. So I think part of it is just gelling. We've got two games. The Open Cup was a great win. I think our win against Cincy was even more impressive win to do that on the road on no rest. So basically 1 week is kind of salvage it. It wasn't just the Open Cup. It was the game after it. But the team is still trying to figure out how to gel, how to play together. And, there's only a few games left to do that. So they really got to get it going before I feel like we're going to really be a contender in the playoffs.
And then real quick, I have a couple people here asking about Vela. He hasn't played yet, has he?
No, he hasn't played. He hasn't even dressed or been on the bench.
But he took pictures with the trophy.
Oh, he did take pictures of the trophy.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah. And honestly, I don't mind. We are the house that Vela built. I think part of it interesting was when he didn't re-sign this year because of he wanted more money and time, and the club didn't want to give him the DP contract or any of that. Our team learned how to win without him, and we had a very slow start, and they picked up and they started winning through the stretch. And now these guys like Bogusz and Oliveira, some of their reward now is seeing like Giroud come in and start to take time. So I thought this is a very interesting thing on that. But getting back to Carlos Vela, I'm not sure how much he's honestly going to play this season. Even in his interview, he said, the way I was let go was just I didn't ever got a chance to say goodbye. And so I think if Vela does play, if he sticks around in next season, maybe he'll play more. I think he's not really match fit. His Instagram, he's been on vacation, drinking really nice wine and champagne on the beach, not just like our friend Danny here, and not really keeping in shape. So I think he's a ways away from being match fit, and he's practicing with the team. Maybe we get him on some late minutes in a game that's been decided, but I don't see him coming in to like help us chase a winner anytime soon.
One thing about LAFC that you got to look at is they have those 4 games left, and it's literally against the full bottom of the West. They play St. Louis, KC, and San Jose, the 3 worst teams in the West. So even if you think LAFC has been kind of falling off, you got to feel like they're going to get their feet and their legs under them for a run to build some momentum into the playoffs.
LAFC right now, I mean, I don't think you see you have 4 games left, so you can end up with 64. I think you're too far behind the Galaxy to catch them.
Yeah. The Derby loss, basically, we're chasing the West. They have to basically fall on their face. And when you're looking at a team ahead of you, and your only hope is the team just completely screws up, it's not realistic.
Right. Well, this past weekend there was a couple of big games, and one of the surprises to me was the fact that Houston lost to Seattle, which jumped them from Seattle overtook them. No, was it from 6th to 5th?
Yeah, they're 5th now.
Yeah.
You're surprised by that result?
I thought that Houston would win. Yeah, I thought Houston would beat Seattle.
So Houston's never beaten Seattle in Seattle ever.
Oh, really? I wasn't aware of that stat.
Never. Yeah, that is one of the worst places for Houston to play. They never win. They usually get killed, honestly. Like playoffs last was 2017. Last time they played them in the playoffs, they got absolutely smacked in Seattle. It's like one of those bogey venues for them.
So how are you feeling about Houston? Are you guys trying? Right now, you are in 6th place. So obviously, you would play the 3rd seed, but you're right behind Seattle by 2 points. I mean, you still have a chance to get into the top 4 also. Jeez, the West Coast is wild right now.
Oh, absolutely.
How are you feeling about Houston right now and where they're positioned in the West?
I feel good. I mean, given the way the season's gone, I think avoiding those wild card spots is pretty impressive. I mean, Hector Herrera missed the first half of the season. They didn't really have a striker for the first half of the season. They get Ponce in. He's played really well, and then he just got hurt. The U22 guy, Lawrence Anali, who absolutely blazed LAFC, tore his ACL, so he's out for the season. So lots of injuries, lots of weird turnover in players, and they still just kind of carried that next man up mentality all through the season and stayed as a pretty consistent team. Not really one of the top teams, but a team that's really hard to beat, and no one wants to play against them in a playoff game, I don't think, because just the way they play defense, the way they know how to grind out results, especially on the road this year. If you look at Houston's away record, 8 wins. That's the best they've ever done in the team's history, even in the 06-07 years where they were smashing teams. So I feel pretty good. I'm actually more confident for playoffs than I was last year, I think.
When I look at Houston, like you said, as far as defensively goes, that's how I feel about Charlotte. I feel like a team that's solid defensively is a team that you do not want to see in the playoffs, because all you need is a solid defensive performance and one magic moment, and you can find yourself on the outside looking in. So I'm with you. I think that nobody wants to see Houston. Nobody wants to see Charlotte. But before we get into Charlotte, Greg, New England, they still have a chance, technically.
Mathematically, yes.
And you also could play spoiler, because you also play against Columbus and you play against Miami coming up in the next couple of weeks. I know I watched videos of Carlos Gila, and I forgot who else was it, that they were shoving or yelling at each other during the game. What's going on in New England? Are you guys imploding?
Well, I also got to say we could play spoiler Houston tomorrow. That's a game.
Oh, that's right. And you got Houston, yeah.
That probably, odds are not in our favor, but in a road game to the Western Conference typically has not been our strong suit. Not a lot has been our strong suit lately, but traditionally this is the type of game that we're not going to do well. And Caleb Porter has talked about rotating some players for the midweek game. So not too confident on that one, but what's going on with the Revs? Yeah, they're imploding. It's been a long year going back to the Bruce Arena resignation last year, hiring Caleb Porter. Really, this was pitched to fans that this was a team that was ready to compete. They brought back pretty much the entire roster for this season, and Caleb Porter basically came in and said, I don't want these guys. We need I think he's been saying that they need 3 windows before you can really judge Caleb Porter, which is a great way of saying this isn't my team. And I think there's been a lot of strife within the locker room, and it's bled out onto the field. Carlos Gil and Javier Arriaga, who is a player that Caleb Porter and Kurt Adolfo acquired in the spring, were caught shoving each other going into the locker room, I believe last week against Charlotte. Dylan Barrero, who is our U22 player, actually has been suspended, I believe, a game and got a second yellow card, basically for yelling obscenities at the referees. We don't know what he said, but it was bad enough for MLS to suspend him an additional game. So a lot of emotions are coming out, and it's been very negative, and it's very self-destructive. So the Rev season, mathematically, we joke that they're still in it. This has been a slow death for the team. They had a really poor spring. They had a 4-game win streak, and then they've had a really poor summer and fall. Outside of that 4-game win streak, they've averaged less than a point a game, and really just everything is kind of built up, and this is leading to the Revs turning over a lot of this roster, especially if they bring back Porter and Adolfo, because Porter has pretty much come out and said that they need to turn over a lot of this team. So yeah, it just seems like this is a team that's waiting for the season to end, and a lot of people are looking to make plans for 2025.
What's that like in the locker room if you're a player and like the coach doesn't like any of you and is like trying to replace you as fast as they can?
Yeah. Well, what's awkward too is earlier this season. So last year, the Revolution Defender of the Year voted by the fans, the team Defender of the Year was Dave Romney, a very respectable defender. He was great in Nashville. The Revs acquired him before the 2023 season. He played every minute of the game of the season in 2023. It came out that Caleb Porter and Kurt Adolfo were trying to trade him for $100,000 in GAM in the spring, and they were unable to do it. And so that came out, and Dave Romney is still there. They weren't able to move on from him. So Dave Romney's been playing this whole season, knowing that Caleb Porter is, not particularly looking to play him, although he has worked his way back in the starting lineup because the team has traded Henry Kessler. So, yeah, it's definitely got to be an awkward feeling. And as I say, I think a lot of these players came to New England to play for Bruce, and they've played for 2 interim coaches, and now Caleb Porter, who has got a completely different style than Bruce, management wise and tactics wise. Caleb Porter has basically tried to teach this team to play less direct and more possession, and it's really not their strong suits. So I think this has just been a year plus of frustration going back to Leagues Cup. And again, the Bruce Arena situation where a lot of players, I think, are just ready to move on to the next chapter.
I'm going to ask you something that's probably old news, but I just never found out. So I'm curious, what happened with Bruce Arena?
We don't know. We don't know.
We still don't know.
We don't know. Nothing
we still
official.
haven't found out.
Nothing
Okay.
official has ever come out.
Okay.
Yeah,
I thought by now something would have
leaked. Is there
leaked.
anything unofficial that you can allude to?
I figured something would have leaked by now.
I'm not trying to Kalen Kyle myself here at all, but no, I think I think the way I'll put it is I think I'll tell you what I've heard unofficially is that just Bruce Arena had a very politically incorrect humor and a lot of jokes, and so we don't know what I don't. My speculation is it's not what did he say, but what are the series of things that he said and what crossed the line and what I think, and again I don't know a lot of what exactly he said, but I think it was kind of the environment that some people didn't take a liking to. And if you want to kind of peel back another onion, The Athletic reported that one of the people that reported him was his assistant Richie Williams, who reportedly his contract was being declined for the 2024 season. The Revs brought him back and they sent him to Revs 2, which I think is also another awkward situation they've created for themselves. So I think there's just a really awkward feeling within the locker room. That's just an example of, the Revs kind of created a situation where there's this Bruce Arena cloud hanging over them. And I think on top of a lot of fans feeling unsatisfied and not really getting closure on it, I think the players feel that way as well. That's
crazy. Tom Brady left and New England just fell apart in every aspect.
He was holding everything together. The Red Sox, the Revolution.
Well, I mean, Tom Brady still got the Celtics.
The Celtics, that is true. He has no impact on the Celtics, but if Tom Brady was there, Jeremy Swayman would have been signed by now. But
there you go. Yeah. All outdoor sports has gone to shit since Tom Brady left.
Yes.
All right, and then Mr. Danny Brams. Charlotte played Inter Miami this past weekend. They grinded out a 1-1 draw. You guys showed why you guys have the best defense in the league, in my opinion. I know statistically it's Columbus, but the way that Charlotte kind of kept 6 in the box, they didn't let anybody really breathe. Nobody wants to play Charlotte, I think, in the playoffs. What did you think about Charlotte showing and what you feel about them going forward into the playoffs?
I mean, it was beautiful. It was fun to watch. The refs definitely tried to make Miami win as much as possible. Although, brother. Thankfully, they did do the right thing.
No, wait. Let's
VAR did do the right thing on the Malanda penalty overturn, but
because they could have given Miami that penalty if they wanted to, since he made contact with the player first.
But they give them they first off they called 9-minute stoppage, which was insane just on its own in the second half, and then they let him play till about 12 minutes. So we're like 11 minutes. We're like at the 56th minute in the second half, and Miami's just peppering shots on our goal. The thing about it that I love the most is that Messi was crying at the end of the game, and I thought that was a beautiful thing. Messi tears were certainly fueling me. It was great, and in all actuality, the referees actually did call the game pretty well, I thought, but they just the absolute extra time that they kept giving was just pissing us all off here in Charlotte. But hey, what can you do? I appreciate you. Thank you for the compliments towards the defense, because some people were going to say, I saw a comment just pop up and say defensive football is boring. Mm-hmm. It can be, but I think the way Charlotte defends, which is sort of they defend the characteristic of Charlotte's great defense is guys getting beat on the wings, but then somehow everyone recovers and stops the chance right before it happens. So
I felt like you guys were giving the wing, take the wide play and good luck getting the ball into the box.
I didn't see exactly the number, but Miami had to have set one of their highest numbers of crosses for the season in that match for sure. Nathan Byrne, who just signed a new contract, is going to be around for another couple of years. Great right back in terms of his speed and his pace getting up and down the wings. But, man, he does get burned, to coin a phrase there, from time to time. But then he recovers so well that it's you almost don't notice. So I like everything Charlotte's doing. I thought – and the thing I liked about that match, though, honestly, was they really when Charlotte kind of tried to take the game to Miami, just even under the pressure a lot of the times, because that's just where you're going to be when Messi's doing his thing. When Miami's kind of at their full strength, you could say maybe Ben Krem should have been in for a full strength team. I'll leave that call to you. He did sub in later. But when Charlotte got the chance, they weren't necessarily playing defensively. They were forced into a lot of defensive play. But whenever they had a chance, they tried to send men forward and get after Miami. They got the first goal. We were leading for, a 10, 15-minute stretch. And the reason the defense is so good is because everyone play. It's not just the back four, but it's also the midfield. Ashley Westwood gets back and plays a lot of defense. The wingers like Abada and Vargas and Pep Biel even play. Their heat maps will show up a lot in the defensive third of the.
Westwood
was
playing like a defensive midfielder. Like he was really getting his foot on a lot of balls. I was really impressed with the defense. And I think Charlotte and the Red Bulls are the two teams that I would want to avoid. Not that I think that Miami couldn't get a victory out of there, but I think that those are the two teams I would want to avoid in the playoffs because they're a pain in the butt.
You'd probably be facing one of them in the second round. It's a good chance.
Probably. All right. So this past weekend, I got the scores up. Were there any games that maybe surprised you or any results that maybe one of you guys thought that surprised you? Like, for example, me, NYCFC, 5-1 to the Red Bulls, a derby game. I was really surprised by that result. But outside of that, I think, and LAFC beating Cincinnati. I believe I was in Cincinnati.
Yeah. No, it was.
Cincinnati is another team that's taking a drop.
I predicted a loss at that game on our, I think most of us predicted a loss. We were
off of a short week.
Yeah, short week after the Open Cup and a late game, So it's like not only that, those guys were doing slip and slides on champagne and beer in the locker room afterwards. And then they basically got on a plane the next day and went all the way to Cincinnati to play a very tough team. And they grinded it out. And this is what gives us a lot of hope over here. Like I said, it wasn't just the Open Cup game, but that none of us really had that game chalked up as a win. And so to see the boys pull it off, it brings a tear to the eye.
Anybody else? Anything interesting that from the weekend, or should we move on?
The Rapids game for me.
Well, yeah, but the Rapids, I felt like it's another team that's kind of been not doing their best over the last couple of weeks.
The Austin draw with Salt Lake was fairly improbable, and Austin has just been terrible this year, and those fans honestly don't deserve that coach. Like their coach should get fired for the sake of the entire that part of Texas. But get that win or that draw against Salt Lake was a good draw.
Well, Joe, you're out in the West Coast. What's going on with Colorado? Because I thought that Colorado has taken a little bit of a stumble also recently.
A little bit. I think they're still pretty damn good. They're a team that scares me as well because, they play pretty solid defense. But they got a real match runner with Georgi Mihalovic.
Mm-hmm.
That you guys played against him in the East for a while with Montreal. He's a player that could just pull something out of his ass and win you a game. He's one of those type of guys. He's fantastic. Mm-hmm. I hate playing against him. He didn't play very well against Houston this year in the games they played. But yeah, he's one of those players that scares me. Rafael Navarro as well. This guy's just scoring a lot of goals this year. And Cole Bassett as well. He's kind of cooled down a little bit, but he's had a really good season. I really like this Colorado team. I'm not a big Chris Armas guy, but I think he's got this team playing really good soccer. And Minnesota to go and absolutely thrash them like that, I didn't expect that. Minnesota's playing pretty well lately, but they're not a team that really has been scoring a lot of goals and like blowing the roof off teams, so I didn't expect that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mihailovic is someone who we could have brought up in that MVP discussion earlier because Colorado was last place in the West last year, and now they're competing. They're not going to finish at the top of the West, but they look like a dangerous team in the playoffs, like Joe just said.
They could very well end up in the second place in the West, though, which is wild.
Yeah,
and Zach Steffen, I think, is got to be a candidate for goalkeeper of the year this year as well.
No, there's only one goalkeeper of the year.
It was interesting with Steffen because the first half of the year, Steffen was like statistically one of the worst keepers in MLS outside of the San Jose group, but they're all the worst. But second half of the year, Zach Steffen statistically has been probably the best keeper in MLS.
He's been a monster lately. Yeah,
like a few weeks before Leagues Cup, he just really turned it on. He was great in Leagues Cup, and he's been great since.
I have a question for you guys.
They said if you don't start playing better, Zach, we're going to send you back to Manchester to clean up Ederson's laundry. And he said, okay, I guess, yeah.
Well, that was going to be my question. And I'll start with Greg. Greg, I don't know how much international football you watch, but when it comes to the U.S. men's national team, do you think it's best to send, for example, Zach Steffen or Matt Turner over to Europe, because I know they're dying to go over there, and then have them not play any games, or should they stay here? Because I have this conversation a lot here in Miami about Drake Callender. Because Drake Callender last year, he had a great season. And everybody's like, but he should go to Europe. But what would I want him to go to Europe for if he's going to be a backup over there? He should just start over here, especially in Miami, since he's getting so much attention, since he's playing for Miami right now with Messi. What do you think? Do you think it's as far as the goalkeepers go, right? Because that's usually where they have absolutely no playing time. What would you prefer, them to stay here as a starter, or should they go overseas? Because that's unfortunately what Matt Turner said, that he had to go over there if he wanted to get onto the U.S. men's national team.
I was going to say this is exactly one of the things the Revolution have had to deal with Matt Turner and whether or not they're going to send him over to Arsenal. I mean, I think a lot of it depends on the opportunity. I mean, Matt Turner going to Arsenal and being a backup at Arsenal is, to me, a much bigger, different conversation than Matt Turner being a backup at Nottingham Forest, which he was, or a backup at Crystal Palace. Same thing with, I mean, this isn't for the United States men's national team, but Georgia Petrovic goes over to Chelsea. Not the starting job there, but obviously that's the next step in his development. And for some players, Petrovic, obviously didn't want to stay with the Revolution once Chelsea came calling, right? I think someone like Matt Turner, it's a bit of a different equation since, the Revs drafted him. He played with them for a long period of time. But ultimately, I think if we're talking about the U.S. national team, what's best for their development. And I think in the majority of cases, that means going over to Europe and training in Europe. And whether or not that's going on loan or whatever, but I think Stefan coming back over to the MLS, I think that's been a great resurgence in his career, because for a long time, I mean, he seemed completely out of the United States men's national picture altogether. And I'm curious if Matt Turner is going to be doing that soon, because it seems like he's floundering around at this point in the Premier League. I think it's time for him to get out of there and to move to a lower league to actually start again. So I think it kind of depends on their next step.
I feel like Americans just get excited with the fact of an American being in Europe, because I remember the Champions League finals, Man City versus Chelsea. Everybody's like, ooh, an American's going to win the Champions League trophy. It's either going to be Pulisic or Zach Steffen. I was like, why the hell are they bringing up Zach Steffen? He's not even going to get it. Like, it was so odd to me that they kept bringing it up. Like, hey, no matter who wins, we're going to get an American holding up the trophy. I was like, we really got to stop this. Like, if they're not playing, I don't know. Me personally, I'd rather them stay here and get some in-game action.
But also, I mean, I think part of that just goes to how far soccer has come in America. I mean, from a Revolution perspective, the mid 2000s, Taylor Twellman was the MVP of the league, one of the best strikers in the league. And, the big controversy was that the Revolution didn't let him go to Preston North End. Now, Petrovic is being sold for $20 million to Chelsea. That's just a huge difference, and a huge difference in scale in terms of the players, the talent that's going over there, the fact that we have Americans in the Champions League final. You're right. I think the fact that Stefan's not even playing, or, you have a guy on the bench, Tejan Buchanan, I think won Serie A, and he's on the bench. He wasn't really much of a contributor. So, but it's still a cool thing that you have people going over there and contributing.
Yeah, no, and Pulisic's finally coming on now with AC Milan, but in that game, I believe he came on as a sub for Chelsea. So,
he almost scored.
Yes, I remember, and I was frustrated that he didn't, because I was like, at least if he scores, we'd at least be like, hey, he contributed for real. But but he's balling now. Was it 3 goals, 3 games in a row for AC Milan? So Pulisic's finally finding his form over there in Italy. Going back to the MLS. When it comes to, I'll let you know what's happening here in Miami, and then I want to hear you guys' takes. Over the last 3 games, Miami's drawn 3 times. So everybody down here is panicking, saying, that's it. This team is cooked. This team was playing better before Messi was here. Yeah. It's been pretty sad to see the way that the fan base has started to worry about what's going on.
I absolutely love it.
So my question to you guys, because I thought possibly most fans, and then obviously I love talking to everybody from the West Coast, because we don't really get to hear what you guys think as much over here. When it comes to favorites, at least in the East Coast, a lot of people say Miami or Columbus. Those are the favorites. On the West Coast, I'm wondering if it's the same thing. Maybe Galaxy, LAFC, Columbus, Miami. Like, is it those 4 teams? Is there a clear-cut favorite? Because now people in Miami and maybe other people are doubting that maybe Miami is the favorites. I want to know what you guys think as far as favorites go. And I'll start with Joe. Joe, do you think that there's a favorite or a handful of favorites to win it all at the end of the year?
I can't even say there's a favorite, really. And the West is so tight. I mean, that 2nd to 7 spot, it's like just up for grabs with everyone. Really, 5 points between them. I mean, I guess the Galaxy would be the favorites, but this Galaxy team is a squad, or most of the team hasn't really ever been in the playoffs. I mean, Puig played the 1 year in the playoffs, got bounced. I mean, they're not a playoff-ready team. I mean, LAFC, I guess I would say they're probably the favorites, because they have a squad of guys who've been there, done that through the MLS playoffs.
I think what's going to kill LAFC is trying to fit a square peg in a round hole with Giroud. I think that maybe when they build around him for next season, maybe LAFC will be more ready. But I don't know. I have a hard time
Giroud's one of those
believing.
guys, though, man. Giroud's one of those guys when the moment comes, he just steps up. I don't even think that fit will matter then. If they need a goal, he's going to score.
Yeah,
he's going to need 4 or 5 moments though, because it's 4 or 5 games that he's going to have to win.
I think they still have time for it all to gel and work out. I mean, to me, I guess I'll get into the favorites after, but we still have 4 league games, plus we have the up to 3-leg opening round of the playoffs, which is kind of silly too. So yeah, and he's starting to play better. Like the last couple of games, he's starting to play better with the team. I mean, I'm sure Joe, when he got here fresh, was the Houston games, was his first games, right. And he looked like he really didn't know where he was supposed to go. We also had Lewis O'Brien, a new midfielder that came in who's been playing really well lately, but he also didn't quite know where his positioning would be. So for us, and maybe it's kind of the same, I think, with Miami and Messi coming back. They just need to get used to playing with him again, and I think it'll work out. And there's still a little bit of time to do that. And you have enough of a lead, you probably aren't going to blow the cushion you have.
I will hope not.
In our case, we seem to be stabilizing it. We're going to see tomorrow as we play St. Louis. San Jose, we always struggle against them no matter where they're on the table. They're just one of those teams that serves us L's when we don't need it. But this is the home stretch, and it's getting that together for the playoff runs. Once a playoff starts, it's a whole new season. For now, it's just kind of getting the seeding and how hard is that first 3-leg match going to be? Like, who are you playing? If we can finish in second and we get, Vancouver Whitecaps for our 3 legs, which we seem to play them all the time, that's going to be nice and easy. If we drop to 6th or 7th, if we have to play Houston in a 3-leg, that's going to be a tough match, So it is what it is.
Who do you want to match?
Favorites. The other thing, favorites in the West. I think the Western Conference Final is going to be LAFC versus. We're going to get an El Tráfico. It's going to be us versus.
You really
Barca.
think so again?
Yeah, I think we've never played in the conference final. We always play in the quarterfinals, but I think we're going to be a conference final this year. And I think we're going to finish first and second if I'm going to bet on it. And so I think it's inevitable that we collide in the playoffs and we serve them another L, and that's going to be that.
So who do you want to match up? If you had to pick, who would you most want to match up in the first round? Who would you least want to match up with?
Absolutely.
Right now you're matched up against Vancouver. That's who you're currently
in the first round. Like we played this 7 times last year, and I think we won 6 and drew 1 of them. But Mark Dos Santos used to coach there, one of our coaches. So we just seem to game prep against them really well. And so that's definitely who I would like to play. I wouldn't mind Austin either right now. How they've been playing, they'd be a good one.
I think there's no way they make it.
I think that the top 9 spots are basically solidified already. Dallas and Austin need 2 miracles. They need miracles.
Austin's like a point away from official elimination, I think.
Yeah. The Seattle Sounders is the other team that's really, for as long as LAFC's been in the league, has always been a contender in the West. They seem to be falling off this year, but they're always one of those teams that just because of their history, they've always been strong. So you always got to be hesitant about them.
And yes, Francisco, it does go 1-8, 2-7, 3-6, 4-5. Danny.
Yes, sir.
Is Miami the favorites? I know you're gonna say yes.
To win it all, or to win the E?
Yeah.
To
win it all.
Go to the final. To go down.
How do you want?
I don't know, man. I think the Galaxy are probably my favorite right now to win it all. They're just younger and hungrier and peaking a little bit better. I think we talked about this on Battered Herons last week. Like the delicious irony of seeing this Miami juggernaut that's been cruising in all season towards the point record, how great it would be to watch it all fall apart here right at the end. And I think there's still a chance of that happening. I think it's been grueling for Miami. They put a lot into this regular season, and the playoffs are not built for what Miami is, which is, it's a lot of playoff games. You can get pushed to some 3-game series in those middle rounds. And I don't know. I think if I was betting, I would bet on LA Galaxy to win it all at more money than I'd bet on Miami.
Okay. Against Columbus in the final?
I mean, as far as winning the East, Miami, Columbus, it's looking good. Columbus definitely doesn't want to see anything of Charlotte in the first round of the playoffs. They haven't taken a point off us all year. So I mean, I don't know what to say. They did draw us, but through a miracle because of Enzo Capetti's dumbass and who's not on them anymore. But
right now, you guys are matched up against each other in the first round.
Yeah. So I mean, Charlotte could eliminate Columbus. I wouldn't hate to see that, but
I wouldn't hate to see that either.
Galaxy, man, LA Galaxy just got something going this year. They look real nice. They got Puig, they got Peck. You know, the whole what's his name? Paintsel didn't really necessarily work out, but he still has his moments. So
Peck's been heating up, man. Peck's been. I thought he was going to be
Peck is real nice. Peck is really
Vanny has a good playoff record too as a coach.
Galaxy, I think at this point is who I would pick out of the West also. But just real quick for Danny Bram's monologue on Inter Miami.
Second time I've trotted that theory out on you, Danny.
I know, and I'm not going to doubt that it could happen, but. Just so you know, Miami and Messi, when he came back, and everybody's like they're having a hard time getting accustomed to playing with each other again. Just one of their first games. Well, first of all, he came back off with 2 months off, came back, had 3 games in 7 days, played the last 30 minutes on turf, which everybody has. Does he play on turf? Doesn't, whatever. He played 30 minutes. Then he played in a baseball pitch, and then he played against the best defense in the league.
How many games did he win?
One, and 30 goal contributions in 14 games. Like, I think that they'll be fine. Before he left to Copa America, they were kicking butt, so I think that they can get back to that. And then I go back to Mr. Unbiased because you have no dog in the race.
Yes.
Who is the favorite, in your opinion, to win it all?
Well, I just want to say that if Miami is in shambles and Messi is dragging this team down, I haven't run this by the Revolution, but I'm pretty confident to say that if you need to salary dump Messi onto anyone, we would happily take him. You're welcome. You're welcome. So that way you can cascade to the top of the standings because you're definitely not there now. But no, I think Miami. Really, to me, I want to say Miami is the favorite here. I mean, I watched this team back in May. I mean, every single week you were, at least I was betting Miami money line, Miami minus 1.5, Messi to score, Suarez to score, and
you were hitting on all of them.
That was profitable. And they're just not that team right now. So I don't know if it's Messi needs to come back. He needs to catch that spark, but they're running out of time. I think Columbus. I mean. I'm going to echo everything Danny said, basically, but I think Miami and Columbus are so strong coming out of the East. That's going to be a really good Eastern Conference final if it's those two teams. I know Columbus has to go through Cincinnati, but defending champs. I believe Columbus just beat Miami in Leagues Cup. I mean that's a team that's battle tested, and I think either one of those teams could come out of the East. They look very, very strong, and if Miami wasn't the 1 seed, I think Columbus would be easily. So I don't know if there's a clear-cut favorite either way. And then again, coming out of the West, both LA teams are so strong. I think there's a lot more competition in the West, though, 1 through 6, that I think you're going to see some more upsets. You might see more of a jumbled up bracket. No one really impresses me in the bottom of the East, and I say that as someone at the very bottom of the East. I watch some of these other teams in playoff position. I say, how are we losing to these teams? 3-0, 4-0. No offense, Danny, but the Miami, Columbus, Cincinnati,
got to show up.
Specifically,
got to show up in Charlotte, baby.
Got to not fight with your teammates on the field. Miami, Columbus. I mean, I think they're just miles ahead. So if we're picking favorites, I'm picking one of those teams. I guess I have the East Coast bias, but because I think there's just more of a chance of upsets in the West.
Before we get into this weekend's games, I what would be a surprise team that you're like, look out for this team because maybe
Orlando,
Colorado,
Orlando. I hate to say Orlando, but I was thinking Orlando also.
4 out of their last 5 they've won.
Yeah, they're hot.
Orlando is
they look better than both the New York teams for sure.
Ladero's a champion player.
Yeah.
Okay, so you
Facundo
think Orlando
nice as well? Yeah.
You think Colorado? Greg, who do you think?
You're putting me on the spot here. I'm gonna kick myself for not answering this tomorrow. You know what, we were talking about Seattle Voodoo Magic. Really, that's my logic. Seattle's just always there at the end of the year. I'll go
one way
Seattle.
or another.
One way or another, Seattle's there. I mean,
it's like the Steelers and the NFL. Just one way or another, you have no idea, but they just end up there.
Yeah, if you told me Seattle if they came out of the West and they're an MLS Cup, I'd say yeah, that makes perfect sense. I mean, I wasn't expecting it at all, but it makes perfect sense.
Seattle Sounders invented soccer, right? Just ask their fans. You know. Yeah.
No,
well, they won the Champions Cup, right? There's the only team that's done that. So
yeah,
I mean, I hate to be a homer, but I think Houston could also be a surprise team.
Hey, you don't hate. Don't lie. You don't hate to be a homer. You love.
I do. I don't want to say because I don't want to give hope. But I mean, Houston's one of those teams that every time they sneak into the playoffs, they do well. I mean, the last 2 times they've been in the playoffs, they've been in the playoffs twice in a decade, and they made the conference finals both times. So I mean,
I'm gonna say Houston and Charlotte are the 2 teams that I would look out for, and I'm not saying that just because you guys are here. It's just I usually go with the best defensive teams to make those upsets because you could just frustrate another team, get a moment of magic, and there you are. And then Eric, a team that you think could possibly surprise, that you'd be like, you know what, maybe look out for this team. Maybe they could do something.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's the trauma of getting spanked by Houston twice in like a week and a half, but I think Houston is a good dark horse. If you would have asked me this a couple weeks ago, I would have told you RSL is another dark horse, but they seem to be falling flat in their face right now. I think Colorado is another one that I would take just because, again, I think I've said it before. I think Mihailovic is the best dead ball set piece taker in the league. And anytime that guy is within 30 yards of the box, he can put it in. And so it's just a team I think that can take games. So I would go Colorado and Houston would be my dark horses.
Houston's path looks kind of nice because right now they match up against Real Salt Lake, who's kind of on a downswing in the first round in theory, and then if they were to win that, they would potentially match against LAFC, who they've had their number.
RSL's worst matchup is Houston too. They've played each other like 9 times in the last 2 years, and Houston beats them every single time, without fail.
So Houston even has the the path.
Goes to Brian Ching, live and well. Let's go.
Houston's got I don't want to say a cupcake schedule, but they should beat the Revolution tomorrow. They have St. Louis on the road. That might be a little bit of a challenge going on.
St. Louis is a trap game.
Yeah, they should get. I feel like they should get a result. But yeah, you're right. St. Louis. I'm not writing that as I'll pencil that in as a result.
I'll be there, so I'm hoping they pull through.
Okay. Well, I don't want to jinx this, but then you got home versus the Galaxy. That game might not matter for the Galaxy, so you might not see a full strength squad. So yeah, I mean the Dynamo, they have a decent path here for a 6th seed. And I forget who made this point, but yeah, you don't have to face the LA teams till later on. And I'm just looking at the results here. It looks like they haven't conceded multiple goals since pre-Leagues Cup, and they've been missing Hector Herrera too. So yeah, I'm the more you guys are talking about Houston, the more I think Houston is the answer here to potential surprise team that makes a deep run.
And that's a great point that you just made, because I think, for example, Charlotte. I think Charlotte right now where they're at, either 6th or 7th, is great for them because you avoid Miami all the way to the Eastern Conference Finals if you were to make it that far. Miami were to make it that far, obviously. So I think that's a sweet spot. You end up in 4th or 5th. You end up playing against the top team in the 2nd round. So that's not a spot you want to be in.
I mean, we looked pretty good against them last weekend, but hey, what can I say?
I promise you, if you play again, we're gonna kick your ass.
Whoa!
I just wanted to put that out there.
This is a friendly show.
The way that second half was going, I was like, Messi's finally starting to get comfortable.
If they'd only had 10 more minutes, they could have scored 3 goals, and the refs tried to give them that 10 more minutes for sure, no doubt.
All right. So coming up here, we got on Wednesday, we got a full slate of games. We got the biggest game, obviously, in my opinion, is Inter Miami Columbus. That one basically could solidify the Supporter Shield. If Miami beats Columbus, they win the Supporter Shield. It would be official. If Columbus were to win, Miami's in big trouble. Any games here that stick out to you guys that you think are big games?
Well, not only is that a Supporter Shield race, but Miami needs that 3 points to break the New England Revolution's heart, and if they're going to keep the pace to break that season points
they
record,
have
they got to win.
They
all
have
three,
to win
yeah.
They have to win all 3 games. I mean, I'm not really.
And the last game, by the way, against the Revolution. I don't know.
Poetic.
2021, Miami beat the Revs in the last game of the season, and then they have a chance to also beat the Revs for the points record. I assume that's going to happen, but Columbus on the road, obviously, I think that's the game of the week. I like Colorado Galaxy too.
Yeah.
And then just because I'm a sick freak who's been battling down at the bottom of the Eastern Conference standings, Atlanta Montreal I think is a 6-pointer game that the 8 seed, 9 seed in the Eastern Conference is just a jambalaya of bad teams that don't deserve to be in the playoffs. And it's kind of a train wreck that I've really enjoyed watching, because each week a new team finds a way to drop points and kind of botch their playoff chances. So Atlanta Montreal is something I'll be watching, although I think I'm one of the few that will be watching it.
No, this whole lineup, I mean, it's hard to pick favorites in the games. Obviously, I agree the Miami and Columbus, that's the highest profile game. But I mean, we're all sickos. I mean, looking at this, Colorado and Galaxy, great game.
Yeah.
Also, Orlando, Philadelphia, a ton of implications for that. New York City, Cincinnati, like that's a good game. Yeah, I mean, and Vancouver, Seattle, like that could decide who makes playoffs and who doesn't. Like that's a 6-point game too. Like there's a lot of really, just as a neutral, like great matchups this weekend. And
if you look at the standings in the East of who's in 8th and 9th right now in the playoff games, it's Toronto and Philly, and there's a good chance that neither of those teams makes the playoffs. It's pretty funny, like they both have tough matchups tomorrow and tough matchups on the weekend. So.
Yeah, Toronto's played one extra game, I think.
Exactly. That's why they're in trouble.
But they have a minus 17 goal differential in their 8th place. I mean, it's
insane.
For a few months ago, I was waiting for Philadelphia to make that streak into the playoffs, just because Philadelphia is also one of those teams that I just always think is going to, kind of similar to Seattle, always think they're going to streak up. They dropped points last weekend. They've had hiccup after hiccup. I mean, they really haven't been able to put it away. And Montreal is level with them, which kind of seems nuts to me, because I think Philadelphia is a much stronger team. DC United has a pretty soft schedule, I believe. Away at Nashville, away at New England. So two away games. Home versus Charlotte. That's probably more of a challenging game, but DCU could catch up. I mean, it's really anyone's game in the Eastern Conference except for Chicago and New England. I mean, it's a real mess, but someone's got to make it.
You guys, a lot of people say that they dislike the fact that so many teams make the playoffs, and I understand. I think it does devalue the playoffs a little bit, but at the same time, doesn't it kind of make it exciting, the fact that these teams still have games that are worth playing for?
Yeah. I think Miami or Philly's a team too that struggled all year that could maybe squeak into the playoffs and cause some noise.
Yeah, I mean, Miami. Let's see. It would be Philly, Toronto, Montreal, or Atlanta. I mean, Philadelphia is not a team that you want to see in the playoffs.
No, because they have a coach and a squad that's been there, done that in the playoffs before. They've been to a final in the last few years, and it's pretty much the same team almost.
So, although I think, especially in a 3-game series, I think Miami could take care of them. I think it makes it interesting to have this many teams in there, because it keeps people entertained and into it all the way to the end. Look, even Greg's still watching soccer, hoping that they could make it into the playoffs. And
I mean, I am still watching this for some reason. Yeah.
Charlotte was in the play-in game last year against New Jersey Red Bulls, and we lost 5-2. We were down 3-0 in the first halftime, and then lost 5-2, and it was horrible. So I mean, it was nice to be in, but I don't really feel like Charlotte was a playoff team last year.
I get it.
Yeah, I think that's the problem. And you look over at the West, it makes a little bit more sense. But you look over in the East, I mean, some of these teams, no disrespect to Montreal, like that isn't a playoff team to me. I think the other thing too that drives me nuts is, and you guys alluded to this at the beginning, the 2 out of 3 thing in the first round is nonsensical. I mean, at a certain point, especially for a league that complains about, schedule congestion, 2 out of 3 first round makes no sense. And I understand it's just for money, but that doesn't really make sense to me. I do like the play-in factor. I think having, non-playoff teams or teams on the cusp kind of play their way in is exciting. I wouldn't be opposed to a 7-10 matchup too, just to make it more interesting. I think that's what they did in the COVID year. So I don't totally hate that many teams. I think it's just a matter of the 2 out of 3 thing. If I could get rid of that, I don't know. If there was some sort of way that could make it a little bit better, where more deserving teams had an advantage over 8-9 seeds? Because I think last year, Sporting Kansas City, weren't they terrible for 2/3 of the year, and then they go out and they knock out St. Louis in the first round? I know it's 2 out of 3, but I wish there was a better advantage for the stronger teams that play year round.
Nobody was crying for St. Louis, though. Those guys are annoying as hell.
No,
yeah.
but
what the worst was last year, and I haven't looked at the schedule this year, but last year, after the round of 3, there was then an international break, and it ended up being
it's the same thing this year. Same thing this year.
Yeah, our Vancouver game was November 5th, and then our conference semis was November 26th. So it was 21 days between the end of our play-in game to the next knockout game.
Oh, because you took care of them in 2 games.
Yeah, that's why I want to play them again.
Yeah. The one thing I do like about the best 2 out of 3 is that each team is guaranteed to host at least one playoff game, which is reward. It is for money, but it also does reward fans.
And that's where I was gonna go with right now. I like the aspect of, if you make it, you reward the fans with a home playoff game, even if they are the 8th or 9th seed. I think that is cool. I think where they messed up is that instead of making it 2 legs, they made it 3 for some reason.
Yeah,
like, just make it a 2 leg, like aggregate.
Yes,
aggregate score 2 games, and then that's it. That's what I think they should do, and let the road team host first, and then the top seed host the second game. That's how I think.
That's not enough of an advantage. It's got to be more of an advantage. Like, even when it was just single elimination games, they put the advantage to the home team as far as they would get like an extra day of rest to the game and little things like that. I feel if it's just a 2-leg match, like a home and away match, that's even. That's evened out. There's no advantage to a higher seeded team in that. So that's my one issue with that. Why I do at least like the 3 games better than 2.
And Tony X is bringing up the point that Philly had 1 win in 17 games. Like, I get it, but this is how they keep the lower teams, engaged. All right, so we went over Wednesday's slate of games, and then just real quick, let's go over these before we head out of here. On Saturday, we got a slate of games also. Not as exciting, at least not for Miami. Charlotte has Montreal, so a couple gimme games. Columbus has Philadelphia. LAFC has Kansas City. So I feel like the Wednesday games are a little more compelling than the ones over the weekend. Is there any game that stands out to you guys?
Cincinnati, Orlando.
Oh, Cincy, Orlando. That is going to be a good one.
That's a great game. I'm going to the St. Louis for the Dynamo game, so I'm going to miss all these games traveling. But yeah, that's a game I would be watching if I was home.
Yeah, Colorado, Seattle, and Portland, Dallas on for the West. Those are probably the 2 most interesting.
Colorado, Seattle is going to be a great game.
Yeah, those have the most implications for the results, I think, of all these. Vancouver, Minnesota too.
Colorado, Seattle both have 50 points right now. They both have 31 games played. So that game right there, depending on what happens tomorrow, is going to be big time for sure.
Yeah, Vancouver, Minnesota is interesting too. I mean, obviously the standings will be a little different by Saturday, but Minnesota, if they go on the road, they get a win, they might be able to get out of that play-in game and get into the 7th spot, which would be huge for them. So, not as exciting a set of games, but Colorado, Seattle, I'm glad you mentioned that game. They're right now even on points. That they might be playing for home field advantage in their matchup in the playoffs.
I think it's great that there's a standalone game so the entire nation gets to watch Toronto beat Miami. I think that's going to be awesome.
And it's funny you say that, because that's where I wanted to end it. I wanted to end it. I was going to ask you guys. Miami had a standalone game against NYCFC 2 weeks ago, and now they have the standalone game at 4:00 against Toronto. I am one of the few that like that all the games are at 7:30 at night. I understand that everybody's like, oh, but I can't watch as many games. I get it. But personally, when I go to the stadium, I hate going at 4:00 in the afternoon. The sun is blazing. Like, give me 7:30. Yeah, no, I hate it. I'm sorry. Charlotte doesn't have the Miami sun. I don't like to cook out there. Give me the nighttime game. So I don't mind it being at 7:30. But I'm assuming, I'll start with Danny. You want them to stagger the start times?
Yeah, I would love to see staggered start times. I'm a bit of an MLS sicko, and I feel like I used to be more of an MLS sicko, and I have been ever since Charlotte FC launched. I'm less of one, and especially since the Apple contract took over. I get it. Shout out my girlfriend. She's actually in Miami this week, traveling for work. And she told me it was like 100 degrees there today. So I feel bad for you a little bit, but at the end, when it comes down to it, man. I just like some afternoon games, and you can also do Friday night games. Bring back Friday night MLS. That was a thing for a while.
I'm with that.
Somehow went away. So what can I say?
That I agree with. Give me Friday night, Sunday night.
Yeah.
Or a 5 o'clock game. But that whole 2 o'clock game against NYCFC, I thought was stupid. Greg, how do you feel about staggered start times? You're okay with what they got going on, or you want to see that changed?
Yeah, well, first off, I just want to express my condolences and send thoughts and prayers that your weather is too nice to have afternoon games. Too sunny up here in the Northeast.
Hot, man.
Up here in the Northeast, it would be nice to wear one less layer when we go to a Revs game. I love staggering. Give me all the staggering in the world. I'd go crazy with it. You know how they like split up March Madness games where they always have a game kind of ending? I'll split them an hour apart so I can always watch the second half of a game all Saturday long. I want to watch, everything going to the final whistle. Give me that going in. But I like what you said there, Danny, too. Friday night games, Sunday games. Part of me says, if we're buying Apple TV, I should be able to watch as much Apple TV as I want. And if you put them all in one single window, I'm only going to watch one game. I could go back and watch more, but I've probably seen other results on Twitter. So, I would stagger it all weekend long, have different times up and down. And that way, too, you can watch more of your rivals. I do think, though, anyway, you said, I think too, part of it is like primetime games. Like if you had a standalone Friday game, we mentioned a standalone Sunday game. If you had a standalone Friday game, it feels like the game of the week, right? I think there's more opportunities too, where it's like, I can watch Messi on Friday and I could watch, El Clasico on Saturday. I just think there's a lot of opportunity that Apple is missing out on by combining them all at once.
Do you think they're trying to do it because they put them all at the same time because they're trying to make MLS 360 be like an NFL Red Zone show, but that's my theory, and I just don't think that these
it doesn't work.
It doesn't work that way.
It's not football, so it doesn't really work that way.
No, I haven't been able to get into that.
No, I get the idea, but football, American football is, a play takes a few seconds, right? So you can kind of splice it all up and throw it there. Soccer isn't meant to be.
You need to see extended bits of possession.
Yeah, it's not meant to be digested that way. So I get the thought process, but really something more like NFL Game Day where they kind of just show rolling highlights as games go on would be more interesting. But yeah, the 360 content, I've tried it a few times. It doesn't work for me.
So the Red Zone thing too is so catered towards like fantasy football, and people don't play fantasy football like they do with MLS. It's not really a thing. And there's fantasy MLS, but it's kind of crap. No one really cares about it.
Right.
But to that point, I think with the NFL it's easier because once a team gets into the red zone, it gets a lot more entertaining. They're about to score, so you can just switch over to that game because they're literally in the red zone. But soccer is completely different unless you're just switching over as soon as there's a set piece. It's just not the same.
Yeah.
Eric, you were gonna say something?
I was. I'm in the same count. I would prefer the games are staggered out. I would love a Friday night game. I would love an earlier Saturday game, afternoon games, evening games, and then Sunday slate of games, like all three. Like I'd sit and watch them all. Right now on my Saturdays I'm watching Brasileiro, and Sundays I'm watching Brasileiro because I love to watch Brasileiro too. But there's also the economic model of MLS, and I think this is the reason why these get put in there. You all see Wednesday night games. What's the attendance like? Like the attendance. It can be rough. You throw a Friday night game in, anything on a work night, it gets tough to get people in the seats. And the economic model of MLS, pre-Apple deal, 80% of the team's revenue was game day revenue, tickets in seats. With the Apple deal, I would speculate it's probably more like 70% is revenue in the seats, and the other 30% is sponsors and other things. So for the teams to really try to get to profitable, it requires people showing up and getting in the seats. And having the 11 o'clock a.m. games in the sun in the middle of July, it's not as appealing for spectators. Same with a Friday night game, same with a Monday night game. But a 5:30 p.m. Saturday night game or a 7:30 p.m. Sunday game, this is the easiest time to sell out a stadium, which on the economic model we are in until TV ratings get closer to MLB or NFL is just the way that teams are going to not go broke.
So if seats and ticket sales are so important, how do New England Revolution still exist?
We're fifth in attendance. Fifth in attendance.
No way. I don't believe that.
Fifth in attendance. Go look it up.
Houston's a team you should be taking that jab at.
Okay.
Well, hey, yeah.
No one comes to our games.
You know, and the thing too is like LAFC, for example, our stadium seats 22,500, and 2,100 of those are season ticket holders. So whether people actually show up to the games or not, 2,100 of those seats are paid for. You know.
And Joe, I know a lot of people were taking shots at Houston for their attendance, but I see that a lot of Houston fans are starting to take shots at Austin now also.
Yeah,
because Austin fans stopped showing up.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it made sense that Austin had so many fans at the game. I mean, Austin's one of those big growing cities in America. You know, a trendy place to be right now to get a soccer team. Really, the only sports thing outside of the Longhorns was college football. So the first real professional sports team there. So of course it was going to pack out everywhere. The first season they were decent. The second year they were one of the best teams in MLS. So. I mean,
they got to sack Josh Wolf. I think the fans are staying away because the coach sucks.
Oh yeah, I'm agreeing. I'm agreeing with that. Yeah, absolutely. And then, I mean, of course, as soon as they fall off, you kind of lose a little bit of that bounce from the first 2 years of being a new trendy team, and they're not good. So of course the fans are going to fall off. And it's funny because they made fun of Houston all the time. I mean, Houston's attendance has fallen off because they had about an entire decade of not making the playoffs and being awful. So that's what happens. You suck. People stop showing up.
Do you guys have somebody that you consider a rival? Is it Boston?
It would be Kansas City and Dallas.
Okay, Kansas City. Okay, Dallas. Yeah. Okay.
Kansas City definitely more of the competitive rivalry, and Dallas the local rival.
No, yeah, I know. Same thing with Miami and Orlando. Nobody really considers Orlando a rival, just an annoying fan base. All right. And I think that wraps it up for this week. Unless there's anything else that you guys want to bring up, and if there isn't, then I'm just gonna go around, let everybody know where they could find you guys if they are so inclined to follow, or they are fans of the team, or just want to hear Danny Brams talk his shit. Danny Brams, where can everybody find you?
The handle is right below my name there for our show. The name of the show is Charlotte Soccer Show, and on the very first episode we ever did, I signed off just kind of spontaneously with "It's for the crown, baby," and that became sort of our catchphrase on the show. So "For the crown, baby" is now the handle. I like to say "baby" at the end of a lot of things, of a lot of statements that I utter. So kind of my thing. But yeah, follow us at "For the Crown, baby." You can follow at Danny Brams, but I don't really tweet much. But shout out Eric, who followed me during the show. Instant follow back as well. Great to meet you, Eric. Great to meet you, Joe and Greg as well. But hit up Charlotte Soccer Show. If you really care, Twitter's fine. I don't really care about Twitter, but if you really want to see the real deal Danny Brams, follow Charlotte Soccer Show on YouTube. YouTube's where it's at for us, and we love you all.
Yeah, hey, look, Danny Brams is a good time. He was telling us about a Fenway Stadium story earlier today. That
I'm banned from Fenway Park.
Yeah. So Danny Brams is a good time. Make sure that you follow Charlotte Soccer Show. Joe, where can everybody find you?
You can find my own Twitter at Joe Shabala10 as listed here, and then you can find my show at Bayou City Soccer on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, anywhere.
All right, Joe, thank you always for coming on. Greg, I mean, I'll thank you for everything outside of that hat. Not sure why you wore that, but let everybody know where they can find you. And by the way, Greg was one of the finalists for that the Fabian Rankel the podcast of the year. So congrats on that also.
We were nominated last year too, and in Revolution fashion, we made it to the finals and didn't win. So, and in terms of the hat, I just had to counter that garbage behind you, or is that a boombox? I don't know what that is, but I do want to say, Revolution Recap. We're available on all podcast platforms. We're on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. We're even on Threads. No one's on Threads. We're on Threads. Go look us up on Revolution Recap. And by the way,
is Threads still a thing?
Still a thing. We're there. We tweet or thread very rarely, but we are there. We are the only Revs threader out there, and it's usually just when we post our podcast. So go follow us on Threads to be ironic. And one more thing, I just want to leave you with this, because I meant to mention this earlier when we were talking about LASC winning Open Cup. Kai Kamara scored. I wanted to give a shout out Kai Kamara. Everyone loves Kai Kamara. My favorite stat in the world. Kai Kamara has played for more teams than were in the league when he debuted as a rookie. That's my favorite stat of all time. I think he's played for like 13 teams, and they were like 12 when he debuted. So love Kai Kamara. Shout out Kai Kamara. Kai Kamara forever.
MLS legend.
That is a great stat. I did not know that one. And then Eric, voice of the Black and Gold. Let everybody know where they can find you.
Yeah, you can find Twitter, Eric Voices of Black and Gold, or at Voices of Black and Gold for our show. We're live every Monday, 7 p.m. Pacific time. And yeah, also on YouTube, subscribe, hit that like button, and do it here also. You know, we all love the subscribe and hitting the like button. Like that's all of our bread and butter, just like butts and seats of the MLS's bread and butter. And also shout out to Kai Kamara. That guy is ageless. Not only that, at 40 years old, he is still a press monster. And that is just, I mean, man, that guy, like, he is going to be studied.
Yeah, well, that's a story for another day. The way he scored on us last year.
And he gave Don Garber shit after winning the U.S. Open Cup. I mean, what a fucking legend.
I love Kai, too. Miss him in Houston.
Oh, yeah. I think everybody misses him because he played for everybody. All right, and don't forget to like and subscribe to everybody on here, Battered MLS fans, and I'm Daniel Granada, Battered Hair Runs into Miami, well, I talked to you guys enough. So, as always, we appreciate you guys hanging out. Thank you to everybody that joined us. You guys were awesome. Don't forget to hit the like, subscribe if you are listening on audio. We appreciate you listening all the way. And please leave us 5 stars, comment, review, all that good stuff. And for everybody that's in the chat, we appreciate you hanging out with us for the last hour and 15 minutes. And we'll be back next week talking just general awards, right? Because the end of the season's coming up. 2 games tomorrow and Saturday. We should have a better idea of who's possibly the MVP and some other awards. So we'll be talking about awards next week. So make sure we catch that next Tuesday, 10 o'clock Eastern. So until the next one, have a good one.